Alright, we're going to try to do this the generic way and show how you replace the wiring harnesses for the fans, and I'll show you how I did the thermistor wiring harnesses and the heater core wire harness and such. I don't know why I got that. So here's the lovely bag from Robo with the wiring harnesses. I ordered those plus a couple 25mm fans and a couple of the larger, what are they, like 40mm fans. Replace those both just because I find it easier if I'm already doing it to go ahead and replace stuff. Makes more sense to me doing it that way. So of course you are going to have to remove the shroud on top and your yellow and black screwdriver. Should, as long as these suckers aren't too tight, should loosen these fairly easily. I've already removed the hot end extruder and everything just because I was already partially way through it before I gave up and just ordered the wiring harnesses and the fans just to get it done with. I don't like doing anything halfway. Doesn't make any sense. I might as well just do it all the first time. I did fix my thermal hardware error with replacing the wiring harnesses and the thermistor and the heater core. It was the wiring harness that was messed up, and it was broken inside the wire, so you couldn't even really see it. It was broken inside the wire right at the juncture where all the wires come together at the extruder carriage. All those wires come down with all the backwards and forward movement from printing. It there's a crimp point, and I've talked to Robo about it before a couple times, and I really think that most of the thermal issues are from wire breaks right there. Anytime you get that thermal code, always go into your terminal in your settings and enter capital M999, and that'll clear the code. And then do a wiggle test. Grab a hold of that wire harness at there and wiggle that sucker, and if your thermal code hardware issue pops back on, ta-da, it's in the wiring harness. I'm hoping Robo does something about it, offers a retro kit to maybe reinforce that area. Now don't forget you have a wire up inside, a wire tab up inside that's a small screw that holds that harness up to the top. And of course you can't see it while I'm doing there, but here we go. There's your wire harness. There's a tie strap attached to a retainer clip that you're going to have to remove to take the top out if you're still running the stock harness wiring cable thingy up there. I like to run the stock as much as possible until the stock parts are no longer worth a crap, or I've exceeded their capabilities, which I'm pretty close to. So take that little screw out, again the same screwdriver. Black and yellow one works for most everything on here. And why is that sucker not coming off of there? Did I? Let's see. No, I put another tie strap on the top there, and it's still hanging on to that little tab. Might have to take both of the screws. Yeah, I made it too taut to hold on to the whole tab, so I'm going to take both of those suckers off of there. So yeah, I think that most of the thermal issues, and I've talked to people on the forums a number of times about this that have the thermal hardware pop, and lately, as I ask people to do, just wiggle that sucker after you reset the code in the terminal to M999. That clears all the codes. I've had a large number of them go, oh yeah, as soon as I wiggle that sucker, code pops back on. What it needs, where everything joins, what I think it needs is a reinforcement, something like what they use for monster cable, for like 0 gauge monster cable, that gives it flexibility and rigidity at the same time, or like this black wiring insulator that it allows it to move around without pinching. So something like one of these, I'm going to use one of these, probably the orange one, on that, and tie strap it down so that it'll allow it to flex with less chance of breaking the cable. So now that we got this off, we're going to go ahead and, again, I've already taken the extruder out of there, but I'm going to have to clip all these tie straps when I was originally replacing just the wiring harness for the extruder and the heater core. So we're going to clip all these off. Having a good set of snips is best. And a nice collection of tie straps. So we're gonna snip these off all the way down so that we can take this black cable protector off, and so we can get at those wires and replace them. So with that off, it is not too hard just to pull that sucker off of there. All right. So the ones I replaced were the ones with the black cables, and those are brand new and nice and fresh. So we're gonna try to take these other two out of the way that we're gonna replace. You may want to mark them to see which is which. I've already marked them, so I know what goes to what. And get those out of the way. These are the black ones I've already done. Get the white ones, which are going to be replaced. Get those up out of the way. And from here, we are going to put this thing on its side, and we're going to take off the bottom piece that has screws on it. Now, oddly, you're going to have one screw that's a little bit different. It's flat where the other ones are domed. I don't know why they did that, but that's odd, and that's just the way it is. So I'm going to take these screws off the bottom. And I believe both of these cables are exactly the same. Again, yeah, mark them so you know which one goes to which. Put a piece of tape on one, and then put that tape on the corresponding piece that it goes up to once you run it. So we're gonna put those to the side. That should be all of them. Yeah. So we're gonna take this back piece off. Be careful when you're taking it off because the fan has a very short cable. And just remember where it goes when you pull that sucker off. We're gonna move this over to the side. It's gonna be there. So we need to follow these two cables inward. Let's see, let's go with this one first. Kind of strung in between each other, which was silly. So we're gonna take this one first and find where it goes to. So that's it. This one goes over to this board right here. So before you yank that sucker, go ahead and get your new cable and run it in there, remembering what piece goes in, and what goes to the board is that little piece. So we're gonna run it in there just like the other one is. Run that in, come down here, again confirming it's the one that we just traced in. Yeah, that's the one. And we're gonna just wiggle it loose, being really careful. And we're gonna put the new one in, try to follow the way that this wire harness comes in. There's just two little bitty pins. Careful putting that in. Making sure don't bend the pins. So that sucker is in. So we can go ahead and pull this one out of all of those. That one is done. A lot of times it's wound around other cables, or you have some cables going through where the red and the black go, so you might have to get the spaghetti cables out of there. And these two, oddly enough, are ran into each other, so as dumb as it may sound, you're gonna have to cut this cable that you just pulled off of cable for the other one. And make sure of that. No, you don't. It came through. So there's the first one we just did, and the second one, that cable that we replaced right there is the one that goes to the small 25 millimeter fan. So what I'm going to do, just to be 110% sure, I'm going to go ahead and attach it to that fan so I know which one I just did. Since I'm replacing the fans anyway, I'm going to go ahead and attach that cable that I ran to the 25 millimeter fan. And this other one, let's see, let's follow this sucker in there. This other one looks like it comes up and over to this side, and again we're going to be careful wiggling it loose. Pull that sucker off of there and gonna pull that through, get that out of the way. The other one, other cable. So that one went next to where the fan for the bottom went. Again, try to follow its same course of the one that you just pulled out of there. Try to put it back in the same general way the other one came out. And very carefully wiggle that sucker back in there. Okay, and with that one being done, we're going to attach this to the larger fan. So again, once you get everything set back up, you know what went to what. You don't have tape to mark it off, just plug them back in. Now, the replacement wires for the harness for the extruder, the thermistor, and the heater core, they actually go down to that large green plug. And see if I can show y'all where they went. So one of them went, again, I'm not 110% because I don't have it that way. One of them went here, and the other one went here. Just follow them. Follow them, and I'm sorry, it went right down over here. And they're really, they're not that hard to do. It's not like you need a schematic of it. It's there. Just watch what you do and replace as you go. So that's it. Reverse install it. Once we get it back together, get the wiring harness hooked back up, I'm going to show you how I'm going to try to rig the wire harness at the extruder to make it a little cleaner and to try to keep it from bending and breaking the cables. Be right back. Okay, now we got all the wires back in the wire harness, and every few inches we've put a zip tie on there. It's a little more than what Robo puts on there, but you know, just want to make sure that they're taut, but not too taut. We don't get any clicks out of them. And we're going to go ahead and try to put the top back on. And now the problem is on these that I'm finding is if you look on yours, your wire harness is going to all come together right about here, and they try to stick the wire harness much as possible back behind the motor, in between the motor and the piece right here. Issue with that is the tie strap that they use is super thick and it's sharp on the edges, and when that wire is sitting there and it's really tight and it's doing this, it's up against a very hot piece of metal here. And if you don't use fans because you're printing ABS, this sucker gets really hot. So between the heat from this, between that wire harness here and that back and forward motion with that really tight tie strap that's really sharp on the edges, you're going to get a wire break. Those wires are typically copper inside, and you're not really going to see that break. You wiggle that back and forth long enough and it's going to snap inside. Think about when you're trying to break something, how do you do it? Piece of metal, you wiggle it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until it weakens at one spot, and same issue there. So typically that stuff weakens right about here where it all joins together. So we're going to try to find a better way to run it, or just a better way to wrap it with one of these two sleeves, and hopefully that works. So Of course, you want to take a look while you've got the top off and make sure everything looks okay. Make sure there's nothing funky looking about anything. The belt, make sure it's good. Make sure that the bearing doesn't look bad while you're at it, while you've got all this apart. See if there's anything else that needs to go before you put it all back together and then have to tear it apart again. It's not too hard to do, but you know, who wants to do a job twice? So before you put the top back on, when you get the wire harness ready to go, just wind it up like this. It makes it so much easier. Just wind it up, ready to put the top back on. And when you put the top back on, you want to make sure that that rod is sitting in that hole there. And on the other side, the same thing. Make sure that those sit inside there. That gives you some stability. If you don't sit them in the right, it's not going to go on. Now, once you got that top on, here's one of the biggest pain in the butts. You need a tie strap, because you need to tie strap that wire harness back up to that piece that holds on to the inside top of there. So you're just going to take your tie strap and you're going to just put it to where it clicks once or twice, because you want that loose to be able to fit up inside there. Take your little piece there with a one little bitty screw in it and get that first side started. This is, if you're a large person with large hands, you're gonna hate this part of it. Because even me with my small hands, it's not fun. You're just barely gonna get the thread started on this one. You don't want to crank that sucker down too tight. Once you get that one going, swing the little piece over so that you can run this tie strap up to there. And again, don't tighten this thing down, just put the tie strap on that little tab, turn it forward or back, whichever one you started with. Put a couple more clicks on it. There. Don't tighten the tie strap down, put it up there. Again, there's not much room to get your hands and wrists up in there, but you'll get it eventually. Put it on there, and then get that second screw, the little bitty screw that you took out of the other side, and try not to put a whole lot of pressure on the Z rods. You don't want to bend any of those. My two boxers, or my boxer and the puppy that we're watching for a neighbor, are deciding they're going to play in between my takes of this. So put that other bolt up in there, and again, just put a few turns on it. Don't crank it down for now. And now the thing is, once you get that done, is you need to see how much space you need so that this wire harness is not too taut. So again, get those screws in there, a couple turns, enough where they're solid for now, and then start hooking up your wiring. And once you get all the wiring hooked up, you can see how far the wire needs to be over before it starts pulling to have that even. So now we're going to start hooking stuff back up. Be right back. It kind of looks ugly there, but that was what I was talking about with that silicone sleeve. That's where most of it is. Robo, these wires need to be shortened and cleaned up. The wire that goes to the stepper motor needs to be lengthened here, where all these are crazy much longer. I think that would help a little bit. You want to make sure that your thermistor and your heater core plugs are visible, because, you know, if they go, you want to make them easy to replace. And lastly, you want to make sure that when this thing slides over, that there's nothing in the way for that to touch that. Because if that doesn't touch that, because there's this stuff in the way, it's not going to give you a good reading. So it's got to go over and touch on its own on that limit switch. If it don't, you're in trouble. But yeah, this Robo, that there needs to be a little wiring rework, and there needs to be a silicone sleeve put right there, like I have that orange one. I'm gonna try some different ways of doing stuff. I'm gonna try to pull these wires back through later on. I need to make sure that the code is all good and all that's gone. Once I find out that that thermal code is gone and there's no more issues, then I'll come back and try to redo these wires, pull them a little taunter back up so that there's less slack here, and maybe that'll help. I think that's why this is like this, but that's the primary thing. That's that thermal sleeve being right there to keep it from pinching, to keep it from getting as hot. Again, that stepper motor gets super hot, especially for people like me that run ABS with no fan. Well, let's see how she does. Let you know. And if you're running matter control, to reset it, just to make sure, you want to go to options, show terminal, down here, capital M 999, and send. That'll reset all that. So we're gonna retry this and cross our fingers that everything's taken care of. If not, I'm gonna start throwing shit. Let you know. Alright, well, she is doing her leveling check, so we'll know here in the next probably 30-45 minutes if she's gonna join her sisters and working. Wish me luck. I'll let y'all know.